Liang was an out-of-the-way town, but all the same, one day in 1941, planes roared in the sky overhead. I remember you asked me in one of your letters whether we have been remote from war since we moved to Liang. You can tell from what I've just described that none of us today can ever be remote from war at any point in China. We know we have all the sympathies and are given some help, but these are either too far-fetched or slow in coming, viewed from some practical angle. If America banned the exportation of oil to Japan a year or even a few months back, would Japanese bombers still be raiding our cities so intensely these days and nights? By this time, the war in China was entering its fifth year. Europe, too, had been plunged into the flames of war. As yet, the United States remained neutral, but had sensed that it might soon become involved. In the summer of 1941, the Office of Strategic Services, the department that would eventually become the CIA, was established in Washington. The office recruited a number of scholars familiar with the situation in the Far East, and among them was John Fairbank, who at the time was teaching history at Harvard. 4 months before Pearl Harbor, I was recruited to be a part of the build-up of academic resources being converted to war purposes under the US government. The incident that would become known simply as Pearl Harbor precipitated US involvement in the Second World War.
But once the Japanese had attacked Pearl Harbor, the Americans became a full-time ally, of course, of the Chinese, and they sent a full mission over to Chongqing to be with Chiang Kai-shek, who had set up his headquarters there. And they were looking for anyone who knew anything about China.
At the end of 1942, John Fairbank was sent to Chongqing in China. A 35-year-old Harvard professor arriving as a civilian to work under the American Embassy, distributing microfilm for the new China section of the Cultural Relations Division of the State Department, while collecting Chinese publications for the Library of Congress. This was, as I announced to all and sundry, my respectable academic cover for my less publicized effort to win the war by finding and microfilming Japanese publications for use by the Office of Strategic Services in Washington. Chongqing was China's secondary capital at the time, and Liang Sicheng regularly visited the city to solicit funds for the Society for the Study of Chinese Architecture. To get there, he would spend 4 days on a crowded steamboat on the Yangtze. In Chongqing, he would visit John Fairbank. The two men had become close friends 10 years before, but had been separated for 7 years. Fairbank later recalled, "Sicheng held my hand for 5 long minutes in excitement. The merry scenes at number 3 North Zongbu Alley were refreshed in my mind." Two months later, John Fairbank travelled in a steamboat upstream from Chongqing to visit Huiyin in Lijuang. It had been 7 years since he had last seen Liang Sicheng's wife. From the edge of town, one walks on the narrow stone paths that circle the rice fields. From being in Sichuan, it gets more water than sunshine and is damp and dirty with the accumulation of years of wetness. This gives rise to a damp smell rather like urine, which hangs over Sichuan like a cloud. Often there's a cloud layer all day and rather lazy rain at night. You have come. The tower in the picture stands by the hill. The wind blows like a symphony. Green grass stretches towards the horizon. Who cares in how many directions the sunlight shines? You and I, like those in the picture, will not meet again after we turn our backs. Phyllis is very thin, but for the moment quite full of life and runs everything as usual by thinking about it before anyone else does. Meals occur by degrees, and after them we discuss things at length, she doing most of the talking. At night after 5:30 one lives in candlelight, so that 8:30 gets to be bedtime. There's no telephone, there's a gramophone with some Beethoven and Mozart. There are thermos bottles but no coffee, plenty of woolen sweaters but few that fit, sheets but not much soap for washing them, pens and pencils but not much paper to write on, newspapers but always several days old. John Fairbank stayed in Lijuang for a week, and in that time he visited the various institutes under the Central Research Academy and met his old friends Fu Xinian, Tao Menghe and Li Ji. He would spend a further year in China, during which time he also visited Kunming and met up with some of the academic friends he had made in Beijing 10 years before. In his memoir, he described their living conditions. I was impressed by our friends' tenacity in continuing to function as scholars. Americans, I imagined, would have forsaken their books and turned to reconstructing their living conditions. But this highly trained Chinese community accepted the primitivism of peasant life and went on with their work. In 1943, John Fairbank and his wife Wilma began sending medicines and vitamins to China from the United States. Wilma also sent other items such as pens and wristwatches to the American consulate in Kunming, from where the staff distributed them in secret. John Fairbank wrote in his memoir, "My private war aim has now emerged to help preserve the American-educated Chinese professors, some of whom were old friends from Peking." The minutes of a meeting of Harvard University's Yanjing Society read in part, John Fairbank has repeatedly suggested to the board that financial assistance be provided for the Chinese scholars to continue their work. Dear Mr. Fairbank, I must thank you for your letter of September the 30th informing me of a grant of US $1,000 that has been awarded to me by the committee. I am deeply touched and feel greatly honoured by the offer of such a grant. My true appreciation could only be properly shown in my work, which is being given such generous aid in advance. In 1943, life for Liang, Sicheng and his family began to change in a subtle way. The weather is bitterly cold, but everyone is well, especially Phyllis, who is getting along and is definitely making improvements. She is, at present, reading something about Granville Baker, who acted in the Court Theatre, Sloane Square, London, where Phyllis passed twice daily going to school and back, but never went in to see the plays by Shaw and others. That was all 21 years ago, and she is regretting it still. This all shows how well she is. As to myself, I am as well as I can be, except for the chilblain on my ears, for which I have a pair of ear warmers, made by tying a bundle of knitting wool around my ears, attracting the universal attention of Lijuangites as I walked through the town. Still, Liang Sicheng was managing to direct considerable energy to the work of the Society for the Study of Chinese Architecture. Meanwhile, I crawl along my usual routine in running this institute, in snail fashion and at snail speed. The chief activity this year is to bring out 2 issues of a bi-annual publication, a crude version of our former quarterly. They are to be printed by the local lithograph printers. We are to draw everything and not use any photographs at all.